Bacha Khan, the greatest Pakhtoon leader ever. Narrator Muhammad Idris. I was born in the house of Khan Bahram Khan in the village of Utmanzai in Shahshnagar, now famous as Hashtanagar. In those days, it was not the custom in our families to keep a record of the date and year of the birth of one's children. Besides, very few people knew how to read and write. Therefore, there is no record of the date and year of my birth. But I have good reason to believe that I was born in 1890 because my mother used to tell me that my brother, Dr. Khan Sahib, was married when I was 11 years old. He was married in 1901, so I think it is correct to say that I was born in 1890. My father was one of the great Khans, chieftains, or rulers of his village, but he had none of that arrogance and vanity of chieftainship. He was extremely even-tempered, God-fearing, sober, generous, compassionate, and a noble character. In any feud, he would always protect the oppressed. If anybody wronged him, he would never try to take revenge. On the contrary, he would forgive the wrongdoer and overlook what he had done. My mother too was most generous and liberal by nature. She used to prepare food for the poor people of the neighborhood and distribute it herself. Sometimes travelers came to stay in the hujra, and we did not always know who they were, but whether they were casual travelers or our own guests. My father always carried their meals on their rooms to their rooms himself. Though we had servants, my father carrying the basket of bread on his head and the plate of curry in his hand would go to the travelers or the guests' room and serve food with his own hands. For my father always said, the unknown traveler is also a guest sent to us by God, and therefore I must serve him myself. Unlike the other Khans, my father was no admirer of the government. He never established any relations with the ruling powers, and the thought of offering them services or flattery never occurred to him. My grandfather, Saifullah Khan, lived by the same principles. At the time when fighting had broken out in Surkhawi and the British wanted to take possession of Buner, some of the Khans of our country were giving them help and support, but my grandfather, Saifullah Khan, chose the side of his oppressed countrymen and cast his lot with the heroic fighters who were opposing the foreign rulers. Whenever and wherever the British were fighting, attacking our people, or trying to make them their slaves, my grandfather always stood firmly on the side of his countrymen and fought shoulder to shoulder with those who were suffering under the oppression of the foreign power. My great grandfather, Abedullah Khan, was famous, powerful, and well loved as a guide and advisor to his people. Because of his enlightened mind and his fervent patriotism, he was put to death at the hands of Durrani, who was the ruler of our country at that time. When after the Durrani's British rule was established, our country was annexed to Punjab. The British had opened many schools in Punjab, but in our country, no steps had been taken to educate our children. There was no love lost between the Pathans and the British. Neither did the Punjabis have any sympathy for us. The government officials in our country were all Punjabis. There were a few primary schools in the larger villages, but hardly any Pathan teacher. And the schools which the British had opened in all parts of India, children received education in their respective mother tongues. But ours were the only unfortunate country where no arrangements for education were made, and in the few schools that existed, the children were taught in a language which was not their own. It was a matter of great regret that though the British had established a few schools for our children, they had also left amidst us very orthodox mullahs who were held in reverence by the people and who pronounced anyone studying in these schools as unbeliever. They made propaganda against the schools, saying, perhaps who send their children to these schools do so only for the sake of money. There will be no place in heaven for any pupils of these schools, they'll be thrown into hell. The real purpose of this propaganda was to keep the Pathans illiterate and uneducated. And this was the reason that, with regard to education, the Pathans were most backward in India. There was no other way for the Pathan children to receive education. And most peoples were taught to some extent in the name of religion, but the instruction was given by the mullahs, and those who took advantage of it mostly did so in order to become imams. But the common people were not interested in this kind of education because before the coming of Islam, our people had been Hindus, and the misconception that education is only for the Brahmins still prevailed in our society. The result of this was that we created division among ourselves, very much like the Hindus' caste system. Though my father had not received any formal education himself, he loved knowledge and learning and took a great interest in it. I was only 5 years old when I was sent to the mosque to be instructed by the mullah. The poor mullah, however, was devoid of learning and practically illiterate. So how could he be expected to teach me the art of reading and writing? He knew some surahs of the Holy Quran by heart. He was even unable to read the Holy Quran. But I very much doubt whether he understood one word of it. The mullah began to teach me the 30 chapters of the Holy Quran. On the day when I started reciting the Quran, my father and my mother distributed sweets. They were very happy that my education had begun. Now, the funny thing was that the mullah was not really competent to teach me as much as the ABC, even. Yet he started teaching me the Quran. How could he, who could himself not recite half the alphabet, be expected to teach me the Quran? Yet the poor mullah was not to be blamed, for he only followed the method of teaching that was prevalent in our country at that time. Our teacher was very cruel, and he used to beat us mercilessly. After some time, I had learnt the whole Quran by heart. My father and mother were very happy and rejoiced at my completing this holy task. The Pathans were very keen on education, and most of them did send their children to the mosques for instruction because no other schools were available, and also because they were not familiar with any kind of learning. And supposing there had been schools in any of the big towns, the mullahs would not have allowed parents to send their children there, for they insisted that all this worldly learning was kufr against religion. They reminded their pupils and other illiterate folk of the verse that was fast becoming a hit and could be heard in all the streets and marketplaces. सबक द मदरसे वही द पार द पैसे वही बजनत के बैजे नवी दोजख के बगर से वही. It means those who learn in schools, they are none but money's tools. In heaven will they never dwell, they will surely go to hell. Fortunately for me, God had blessed me with a brave and broad minded father, and a saintly and loving mother, both of whom ignored the mullah's condemnation and took no notice of what the neighborhood said. They sent my brother Dr. Khan Sahib to school, and as far as I know, he was the first boy in Hashtnagar to be educated in a school. When I had finished studying the Holy Quran, my parents sent me to school too. I was 8 years old then. The mullahs secretly tried to spread slander against my parents, but they did not have the courage to forbid me going to school, nor did they dare to call my parents unbelievers. My father was an influential and respected Khan, and therefore the mullahs could not openly speak against him.